G'day everyone, Prep Aussie here. I hope you're all well in whatever part of the world you're watching this video. Today is Monday the 17th of September 2018 and the time here is 09:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time. I've been getting told off by people for saying 09:30. Well, I was never in the military, so I don't know what the big deal is. You'd be surprised how many people write to me and tell me that. World's collapsing around our ears, but I've got to remember to say 0. Yeah. Okay. Look, what I want to talk to you about today is two things. I want to read something to you that David Morgan, the Silver Guru, sent me. It's really important. And I just want to briefly talk about the hurricane, cyclone for Australians, that went through North Carolina and all that area. Now, if you've been paying attention, listen, this is actually good, a good review situation for people to do with their preparations. Now, I've just been absolutely astounded. And when I mean astounded, I mean like literally my jaw, because of how many dumb people, and I'm trying to be nice here, how many ridiculously stupid people as well think that this cracks me up, that a refrigerator forms part of your preparations. Okay, let's just step back one step here. If you actually think that, then you are not, and I mean this in all reality, you are not a prepper. I can't understand how many people I've watched on the Fox News, etc. this morning going, oh, we stocked up like they said and the refrigerator broke down, now we've got no food. Honestly, it is so bloody brain dead, it's not even funny. Let's just talk about this sensibly, okay? A refrigerator which runs on power from the government on their power poles is not and should never be part of your preparations. If you've got a bloody great big Briggs and Stratton generator outside that clicks over as soon as your power drops down, yeah, sure. But even then, that's going to be hard to use all the time because of diesel. So if you're a real prepper, your actual generator would click in only for certain times. You wouldn't use it during the day, for example. And you'd only use it for a couple of hours at each go. And you wouldn't be using it to turn it on to wash your clothes, etc. So look, that's a whole nother thing. But look, please, a refrigerator is not a preparation item. It is your worst nightmare. If you're going out, if you're watching this and you're in America in that region and you've gone out and bought a shitload of meat, then really you need to be shot in the head, kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's just dumb. If you're in that area and you went out and you bought tins of meat pies, canned foods, beans, corn, stocked up on some flour, you know, so you can make a campsite fire and make some bread if you want it. You know, all that sort of stuff is sensible. But honestly, I lost track of how many times I watched the news this morning, people going, oh, our fridge broke down. I watched one where all the people were queuing up at a service station. This is 3 days in now, right? 3 days. So just remember, it's 3 days in, and they're at a service station. They're asking people, "What are you here for?" And you would expect the reply to be, "Oh, I've run out of diesel, or I've run out of petrol." No, they've run out of food, and the only place they can get food is at the service stations. Sad, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like, these are grown-ups. They haven't even got 3 days in. And there's fights breaking out at service stations. You know, it's just ridiculous. I'll leave it there, but my point is, you know, the fridge, gerator, freezer, for one and another term, and your washing machine are not preparation items. If you can believe that. You know what amazes me as well? I'm sitting here watching all the devastation. I've watched it was in Jacksonville, I think, and the river level is now at record highs. But in the next 3 days, it's expected to go probably twice as high. So what are these people going to do? They're blocked in. There's one place, I can't remember where it was, but they were actually blocked in. They couldn't get out. There was no way for them to get in, no way for them to get out, because the water's that high. And it's going higher. And they're all standing at a servo waiting for food. Imagine what they're going to be doing after 6 days. Now you can see why Katrina turned into such a nightmare. Same scenario, just brain dead people. Now, I wonder where the 1.5 million people went to. No one thinks about that much. So interesting, isn't it? Right, I'll leave it there. I'll read this email from David to you. Okay, folks, before I go to the email that David sent, I want to just briefly touch on two things. QAnon and all the pedo stuff. I've got people asking me or telling me that I'm not keeping up to date with Q and all the paedophilia stuff, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Now, if you're a follower of my channel, you'll know that I think that the Q stuff is a little bit of theatre. And do I think it's real? Yes, I do. But it's a theatre, folks. And the reason I say that is because, look, there's enough people delving into the whole Q thing. I can't really do much more than what I'm doing. I listen to Stroppy Me, and he reads every Q post. I can't stand all that periphery shit. I think what Q's trying to say, and look, this is what Q's telling you. Well, that's not what I want to hear. And I'm not here to second guess what Q's saying. I just want to hear what Q's saying. So I listen to Stroppy Me, who is probably the only person on the YouTube who actually sits there and actually reads it. I've never seen anybody do that. He reads every single Q post so that all I've got to do is keep up to it. I'm not here to second guess Q, and I'm not here to psychoanalyze what Q's saying and doing and all that sort of shit. And I kind of get a bit annoyed with all these. Yeah, have you seen how many channels there are for Q? And that's another reason why I call it theatre, is because, look, if this was fair income, there'd only be one Q channel. And what I mean by fair income, I mean, like, if there was... Why has Q never nominated someone to be the sole person to disseminate the information? This is what I don't get. How come there's 7,000 of them now? And they're all going off on a tangent. So much so that, like I said, I gave up listening to all of the, especially the American ones. Oh my God, they do hours on this stuff. Q said, go there. But when you got there, you had to go there. And come on, it's too much. And the pedo stuff, I'm not getting involved in it. And I'll tell you flat right now, even when it all breaks open, if it ever does or whatever happens, I will not get involved in it. And the reason I will not get involved in it is because A, I don't know what it's about. I know what it's about, but I don't know anything else studiously about it, except what you guys all know. I have no evidence. I have no backup information. I have no sources. And even then, I probably still wouldn't do it. It's not to do it. The only person I ever listened to on it is Liz Crokin, who's been pretty close to the mark, and she doesn't get to, let's go down this rabbit hole and up that one. She just tells you, and that's it. It's kind of like stroppy meat. Now, I'm not into that stuff. I'm not going to get into that stuff because people want me to get into that stuff. That's not what this is about. My title is Prep Aussie, which, by the way, is an acronym for Prepare Australia. That's what the title was always supposed to be, but I wouldn't accept that when I put it in. And somehow I ended up being Prep. Well, the actual thing is Prepare Australia, if that makes sense. Happy to wear the prep thing. It is what it is now. I can't change it. But it nowhere does it say Prepare Australia against pedophiles. Because I just don't know what I'm talking about. Simple as that. Why would I bother? I don't know half the stuff that I'm talking about, whether I know it properly or not. But I do a pretty good job, I reckon. And I've always said that the financial, regardless of what everything else happens, the financial is going to be first. Then there's going to be a war. I'm sorry to tell you that, but it's the truth. And Australia will get invaded. More than likely from the Chinese. Now you can and ah about that if you want, but that's just my synopsis of it, which is my point. My synopsis of the information that I have as regards to that is my synopsis. Hope that makes sense. I'm not going to try and do a synopsism, is that the word? A breakdown of the Q stuff when I don't know anything about it. And if you want my honest opinion, I don't think a lot of people, the 7,000 people that are now getting the Q stuff, I think it's probably 2 that probably know what they're talking about. But I've stopped listening to them as well because they've gone off on a tangent as well. It's theatre, and it needs to stop being theatre, and it needs to actually start being something, because it's actually nothing at the moment except theatre. Sorry, that's just my feelings on it. Okay, I'll show you this thing from David. This letter, this email is very important. I'll put the link in the description box. Every one of you, regardless of who you are, what you're doing, should read this. First of all, I'd like to say thank you for David for being such a good friend and having trusted me to get this message out there. This article is quite simply staggering. I'll just start reading it and then you guys can read it. Over the last few months, the Royal Commission has exposed what my research did back then. But the campaigner who first exposed the issue going back to the early 2000s continues to discover even more extraordinary facts. Between the three of us, the conclusion is clear. Australia's banking system is about to blow up, potentially triggering serious disruption in financial markets, including here in Britain. Obviously, this is written from Britain. Let's take a look at some of what the Royal Commission has found first. Now, the interesting thing here is that this guy actually gives you a breakdown of what's actually happened in the Royal Commission from a perspective of financial markets in the UK. Now, the reason this is really interesting is because here in Australia, if you haven't noticed, there's only really been one newspaper, is that the term? One news company, ABC, that has been really diligently putting it out there for the Royal Commission. All the others have just given it scant regard, and we obviously know the reason why. But this guy's coming from the UK and is actually writing factual information as regards to what's really happening and where this is all going to go. And that's why this article is so important for everyone sitting out there. And if I don't mind blowing my own trumpet here a bit. Everything he says is everything that I told you. And everything that David's told you, everything that Bill Holder's told you, anyone else in the financial services has told you, this guy is 100% on the mark. So as an economic hack, pat my back, did a pretty good job. And you'll see that when you read this. This article came out a couple of days ago. Okay. Major financial service providers have stolen about $1 billion Australian dollars from customers through fees for no service deals. They charge people for services they never received, such as regular analysis of their financial position. One bank, formerly Australia's central bank, even charged dead people a fee for no service. Having discovered the problems, the bank sat on it for 2 years and did nothing. That bank, by the way, that he's talking about is Commonwealth Bank. A bank which provided commissions to anyone who introduced new borrowers to them was caught giving a tailor $488,000 for his help in securing $122 million in home loans. Now, do you remember when I said to you, the banks are not interested in, whether you've got enough money. They just want turnover. They want turnover, shareholders turnover, more money coming in. Now, when you keep reading this article, the guy goes into exactly how this is going to play out, as I've told you. And I'll read it to you. In what could be the biggest class action in history, 5 million Australians are lining up to sue their pension funds, which are often owned by the banks. Instead of investing their customers' savings in the highest interest offering products, the banks just held onto their cash in their own accounts because of the long periods of time which pension funds hold savings. So these guys are obviously double dipping. Even small differences in interest rates add up to huge lost returns per person. During the Royal Commission here, it says, funny enough, the UK government is busy implementing the same sort of pension system under its opt-out rules. A witness let me go down here a bit. All this bit here tells you exactly what I told you. They're just getting loans in and people can't afford to pay them. Now, this is interesting. What Australians haven't figured out yet. The most interesting part of Australia's subprime mess is how surprised everyone is. Why do the bankers lend to people who can't afford their debt? It makes no sense. The usual answer is incomplete. Yes, banks stand to gain based on fees, creating a churn and burn model for borrowers who borrow and default. But what about the risk? This is interesting. Listen to this. At the very heart of the issue is something I have not seen any other analyst write about. It's a distinction between default risk and collateral risk. While house prices are rising, it makes sense to borrow money. True. The worst case scenario for you and the lender is to sell your house. The borrower gets to keep the capital gain and the bank's risk of not being repaid is tiny. Right, I'll leave that bit out. I'll go to here. If the house prices stop going up, suddenly collateral risk and default risk strike in a dangerous way. If bankers can't rely on rising house prices to bail them out of bad lending decisions and practices, the default risk of their borrowers makes a comeback. It becomes a deciding factor on whether a loan makes sense or not. That's why these guys are charging after the farmers. Over the last few months, house prices in Australia have begun dropping. The spike in collateral risk and the return of default risk is leading bankers to realise they're sitting on a time bomb. Let me read this bit. After the margin of issues are interest-only loans. At the margin of this issue are interest-only loans because borrowers don't repay the principal. The collateral risk kicks in when house prices stop going up, not just when they fall. According to Brayley, many borrowers don't have a clue they're actually paying an interest-only loan. They just think they have a mortgage with no idea what sort that might be. That's staggering. And look, like I said, the article goes on for another couple of things, paragraphs, but I won't read it all. Like I said, I'll leave the description in the description box, and I highly recommend that you read it, and not only that, you send it to people that you know. I've had loads of people ask me about what should I do about my mortgage, etc. Well, read this article. I'm not a financial advisor, but I've told you, if you can fix your mortgage at the lowest possible interest rate you can get it for the next couple of years, then I think you're in a better position than a lot of us. But don't forget, when this thing explodes, boom, it goes up. Every fiscal reality that you know is going to collide at an intersection. And there's going to be dead bodies everywhere. How it plays out in the future, when this all does explode, can I save my house? There won't be jobs, not in the short term. So don't think you're going to get up, I'm just going to repay my mortgage with my job. Then you might not have a job. You're talking about a wholesale restructure of the whole economy that you understand. It's done. It's cooked. It's bent. It's broken. It's busted. Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall. You can't fix it. So if you're sitting there thinking, how am I going to repay my mortgage, blah, 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 don't worry about that, because I want you to do something. I want you to look outside your house at your neighbours, because they're all going to be in the same boat. Every single one of us is going to be in the same boat. So the answer is that you need to remember every single one of us is going to be in the same boat. So what you need to start thinking is how collectively we can stop this from affecting us so much. Now remember, you're dealing with people who may or may not have any idea of what you're talking about. Now, what does the bank do? The bank's gone bust. Let's use Commonwealth Bank for example. Commonwealth Bank goes bust. Bang. An entity will take that over. A foreign entity, you would think, because there's no one in Australia, unless the government's prepared to step in and become the Bank of Australia, which is a very, very high possibility. And the reason I say that is because the international banking system is going to collapse. So they're going to say, every country, if they want money, must be its own bank. Now do you understand about the bank bail-ins? All that money is ours. Bang. They're going to take the lot. They're going to want something for their piece of pie. And then they will literally get the coffee grinder and keep screwing it until they've got the finest coffee on the planet. And then they're going to pressurise it and try and squirt water through it, and only certain few people will get the water on them. I guess what I'm trying to say here is stop deluding yourself about how bad it's going to be. Aim high for badness, and if it comes in underneath your expectations, great. But in the same token, don't go running down hallways going, flapping your arms around, because that's not going to do anything for you. Aim high for bad, worst case scenario, prepare for that, and anything under your worst case scenario is a bonus. Hope that makes sense. But you need to stop writing to me and asking me about your mortgage, etc. We're all in the same boat. You do what you have to do with your financial system and your services. I can give you my financial wherewithal if you want. It's not financial advice. I'm just doing what I think is smart. For all I know, it might turn out not to be smart. I don't think it is, but it might. If it does, and they say, you're going to lose your house. You come and take it, mate. And come and take my neighbours and everyone else, because once this kicks off and people realise the secondary bad thing here is that once this happens and the reset happens, people are going to realise that, this is drug lords, etc. like that. They're going to realise, I can have whatever house I want. And this will be a big inner city problem, I reckon. And people are literally going to come and take your house. I'm being dead serious. People are going to work out pretty quick, I haven't got a mortgage. He hasn't got a mortgage. They haven't got a mortgage. So I'm just going to take whatever I want. I don't know if you've thought of that yet, but that's actually what's going to happen. Especially, there's people who want to take what you have, regardless if it's food, water, cars, everything else. So, here's something. How many of you have tracking devices on your cars? Because a car alarm ain't going to fit it when this all kicks in if someone steals your car, which is going to happen. But how many of you have tracking devices fitted to your cars? Not that the police will do bugger all about it anyway, but you might be able to find it. Righto, let's go to prayers. Well, what a verse of the day after all that. 2 kinds of wisdom. Who is wise and understanding among you? Let them show it by their good life, by deeds done in the humility that comes from wisdom. Whoa, very good. Okay, folks, as always, we'll finish with the Lord's Prayer. And this is the King James Version. And I did that on purpose on Friday to see how many people would actually notice. One person wrote to me and said, "Oh, thank God you used the real prayer." Well done. Our Father, which art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done in earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. All right, folks, I've rabbited on enough. Prep out.